set up this meeting. I'm Dan Glenn, the Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Stoughton. This is Gary Lacey, the President of Recreation Engineering and Planning. He's the engineer that's working on the project. So tonight we're just talking about the actual Whitewater Park and the in-stream improvements. There's a lot of other things that are going on down in that area of the city. We're doing a master plan for Man Park, and there's a redevelopment going on north of the river. So here's a quick little video that hits home. This is from Iowa. It's 2 minutes. There's a lot of comments in here that I get from the public. So.
Picture Iowa. You probably think this, some of this, but what about this?
If we don't have natural white water, we'll build it.
Iowa, yeah, you guys got a couple of parks out there, so we're getting around.
Iowa, and the country as a whole, has a dam problem.
Dams are bad because they're really dangerous. People die on them every year.
But there is a solution,
You guys have this dam, it's breaking down on you, this is what we think you should do.
and it's tear them down and replace them with whitewater parks.
There were a lot of people saying, this is nutty.
What kayakers, where are they?
And he said, when they first brought this idea up, I thought this was the dumbest bleeping idea.
We met with about 80 people, 40 of which were fishermen with pitchforks and torches.
We're the most alternate state in the United States. So our rivers and our streams are really our last wild spaces.
What you're seeing is people coming out, building that relationship with their environment again, and get people to come back in the water and play.
It's part of a nationwide movement to remove dams, and it's bigger than just riding rapids.
This movement that's starting, that we can actually do some river restorations and in-stream work to provide quality fish habitat, water quality improvement, and potentially a recreational opportunity, turns a patch job essentially into something that's going to bring money and tourists and opportunity back into that community.
And some of those same fishermen have come up to me, they're like, well, I was one of the fishermen at that original meeting, and you're like, yeah? And, you know, I've actually had guys come up and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry, you know, for opposing it so strongly at the time, since we just didn't know, and thank you for doing it.
Go back on a nice sunny day, and there's now hundreds of people.
He said it was a transformation.
This is running. This ribbon of gold has been going through this community for centuries.
And it's something that they can be proud of and that people want to go see. And if we can do that in Iowa, we can do that anywhere.
Okay, so I'm going to give a brief presentation on the project history. Gary Lacey will do an update on the current design, and I'll do a little presentation on the next steps. Outside, after the meeting, we'll be taking questions and answers. You also have comment cards. If you want to there's a box out in the hallway, so if you want to put your comment card in the box with your contact information too, I'll reply to your questions through email or phone or whatever you want. So this whole project started with a citizen coming to our office. The former Parks Director, Tom Lynch, and I worked together for over a decade, and we were always trying to look at things, ways to improve the river, because river recreation is one of the things that was always for like a top priority on our open space study that we do every 5 years. So in November 2016, there was a citizen that came to our office and said, you have to check out these places in Iowa. And she went to Manchester, which was in the video. And we had the same reaction, like some of the people in the video had, like, you're kidding me, Whitewater Park and Stoughton, you're crazy. So, well, we gave her the benefit of the doubt, and we actually did a lot of the research and talked to a lot of mayors and things like that in the community. So this is a quote that P.T. Wood, the mayor of Salida, Colorado, gave us. There's some other things that have research that we did too, like we found out that it spurs economic development, and we knew that there was an RDA area next to the river, and what a great fit this would be. Then there's some environmental ways that it improves the river. This is a project in West Bend, Wisconsin, where they removed the dam. In this picture to the right is 12 years later, they created a park. What these types of projects do, they'll actually improve the water quality in the river. I'll get to the sediment. There's some contaminated sediment in the river. We're going to clean that up as part of this project as well. A lot of these types of parks have river festivals. So this is one in Reno, Nevada. There's a giant one in Salida, Colorado too. They bring tons of tourism to town, but also, it gets people out of their houses interacting with each other. The Boise, Idaho picture is good because everyone I talk to about these projects, you don't have to be a paddler or a surfer to actually use this type of park. For every one person that's in the water, they tell me that there's 2 people out of the water watching the people actually in the water. Then there's obviously the health benefits to this. People actually going outside exercising. Trails are a major component of this project. Then there's also safety. So, like they said in the video, Iowa has a dam problem. A lot of their dams are low-head dams, and it creates like a vortex that sucks people under and they drown. The picture on the right is our type of dam. It has Tainer gates. It's not quite as dangerous, but it is dangerous. And if you're not aware, a couple summers ago, a paddler actually was paddling down the river and got sucked underneath the dam, and luckily she survived. Okay, there's other aspects in the recreation that this project impacts. Fishing is a big one. What this project will do is create fish passages and habitat for the fish in the river. Right now, the fish migration is stopped by the dam. So I talked to Dan O'Ellie, who's the fish biologist for the DNR in this region. And he says by doing this, it'll improve the fishery. What will happen is the fish will have access to new spawning grounds that they'll be able to access. This video right here is on our website. It shows smallmouth bass in a river and how they get upstream, and how the fish passages work. And hopefully this will end up connecting to the regional trails coming in from McFarland. So we still have this question if this is something that can be done in Wisconsin. So in January 2018, I had a meeting with the Secretary Deputy of the region of the DNR, which is responsible for the southern region of the state, and then the Waterways Director, who is in charge of the permitting for waterways in this state. At that time, I asked him, is this what do you guys think about this idea? And at the time, they both told me, they're shaking their head, yes, this is a good idea, but they're not going to let you know if it's going to get permitted unless you actually do the engineering and fill out the permitting forms. But we got a lot of good feedback at that meeting, and at that point, we moved forward with a concept plan for the park. So between February and May of 2018, we did the development for the park. There was 3 options for the concept plan. We could do a dam out option, keep the dam in option, and this is a bypass channel option. At the time, this is probably the least controversial, and I gave it the most benefits. So this is the direction we moved in. At the presentation, there was probably, I think there's a little bit more people at the concept plan presentation than there is here tonight. So we knew there was a lot of good feedback, a lot of momentum behind the project. So at that time, I had created a steering committee for the project. So over the course of the summer of that year, I recruited a lot of members and different types of stakeholders for it. So there's steering committee members. You could stand up if you want. But like Alex from Dane County Parks, he's on the steering committee. Regina in the back, she's a city council person, and she's on the steering committee. Matt, he's a city attorney, but he's also a whitewater paddler. Pete is, we have a member from the RDA. Vike, who owns Vikey Brew Pub, he's a downtown business owner. Brandon Holstein, he's a member of Madison Sports Commission. I think I'm missing somebody. But these people, they've been meeting with once a month for basically since August 2018. And our meetings, they last for like 3 hours, and we'll debate different topics, and we'll have experts come in and they'll talk to the group. And what it really does is give these people on the steering committee the background information they need to make a decision for the project. So it just wasn't resting on the city's shoulders. It was actually made the decisions to move forward were happening. The steering committee members were doing the decision making. And what they would do is they would make a recommendation to the Parks and Rec Committee. So some of the experts that we brought in were places that have gone through dam removals. We've had people come in or talk through conference calls who actually have whitewater parks. We've had John Reimer from Dane County, who's working on their flood mitigation program. Rob Davis, who does the dam permitting for the DNR. So a lot of different types of experts. During this time, we had a person who, like I said before, a paddler during the high water period, get sucked underneath the dam. So at that point, the steering committee really took public safety into account when they're moving forward with the design work. So this past summer, the steering committee made a recommendation to Gary Lacey that they would like a dam out design for the Whitewater Park. So what we're doing tonight is a preliminary design. It's a 60% design. So some of the design has changed. We'll get to that later. So during the course of that summer as well, we had an economic impact analysis done for the project. What they did is they looked at roughly about a dozen different economic impact analysis that were done for other whitewater parks in the country. And then they look at the different markets in the Dane County region, which would be the 30-minute, the lightest shade in the picture to the right. The next color would be 60-minute and 120 minutes. So these other studies said that if you have a really good park, you could get people from 2 hours away to go to your park to participate and use it. The numbers for the visitor expenditures are just for kayak paddlers, even though there's other things going on with the park. And what you'll see is, people who use these type of things, if they stay overnight, they'll pay for accommodation, they'll go out to eat, get gas so they can go home, those types of things. The dollar amounts, those are the markets. So in 2010, there was roughly 30,000 paddlers in Dane County that just did kayak paddling. That isn't canoeing or whitewater rafting, just kayak paddling. Then if you extrapolate that to the 60-minute drive time, you have 81,000 and 433,000. So the visitor expenditure is the 30,000 times their kayaker spending, that's where you get the $2 million. So the design implications are pretty important for this, because if we can get more people to come, there's more economic impact created by the park. Also going on this summer, we had sediment sampling done in the mill pond. So the way a dam works is it's built where there's a gradient in the river, and over a course of time, sediment comes down the river and is trapped by the dam. So you have a high level of sediment build up near dams. We have roughly 47,000 cubic yards of sediment built up by the dam. And how they do it, you can see if there's a picture of a guy in a boat and they have a long metal tube and they'll go down and the tube's hollow and they'll collect the sediment, but it also lets them know how thick the sediment is, and that's how they determine the volume of the sediment. So there's 11 different sampling locations in the mill pond, and there's actually 2 that are depicted in here that were downstream of the dam. And the natural river channel would hug the southern edge of where the river is now, and the impoundment area is the dark, like the yellowish colors. So there was contamination found, and the DNR told us that it's not, I don't want to downplay it and say it's not serious, but it's looking like we could, if the water levels decrease and it's exposed, that we could cap it and vegetate the area. And what that means is that it's basically making it, based on their WDNR standards, it makes it safe for adults and children to actually use the river. So I'll turn this over to Gary. You can talk about preliminary design.
Thank you, Dan. Again, my name is Gary Lacey with Recreation Engineering and Planning out of Boulder, Colorado. And I don't know if how many people were here last time, which was 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember now, when we first presented some of these concepts. And but my quick background, I'm a paddler, have been for over 60 years now, I guess. And I'm also a professional engineer and have a company that all we do is river improvements, whitewater parks, anything to do with rivers, especially in communities. And so we're really honored to work on this project. I think it's extremely exciting. I went to undergraduate in Colorado, but I went to graduate school in Madison, Wisconsin. So paddled all around the state, and I'm familiar with this area. And you know, I can't believe I'm actually back working in this area, but thoroughly enjoy it. And I think I was just listening to Dan and just thinking back, looking at that Iowa video. Those were all our projects in Charles City and Manchester, and there tends to be similarities. And those had horribly dangerous dams. Unfortunately, people killed going over those. But mainly turning a liability into an amenity. And it is taking root across the country. In my state of Colorado, I think we have maybe 27 of them now, and they're great from a safety perspective to improve safety, navigability, but also look at those economic studies. It's absolutely amazing, at least in my lifetime, looking where I was kind of the dirtbag kayaker. You know, we would just go kayak. I don't know if we'd spend any money, didn't have any money, and to something now where these towns that I've in my lifetime have watched them and grown up with these projects. It's just absolutely astounding the impact it's had, not only economics but in the environment, and just the community turning toward the river. And unfortunately, in this country, a lot of communities turn their back on the river and dumped in them and denuded them and channelized them and all that stuff. And so even the little town of Salida, Colorado, that Dan was mentioning, where I used to kayak race in the early 70s, and seeing what's happened to that town now, when you go there, it is a focal point of the community. So it's not all those expenditures on economics, but also redevelopment of old buildings. There's old steam plants, everything's been converted to public art centers and restaurants and bars and all that. So it's exciting. I can just see it here. It'd be, I firmly believe it would be a great positive influence in the town of Stoughton. So that's just kind of, sorry to go on, but that's a quick background and a little bit of my history. But I thought I'd just briefly go through the concept plan. I think we have one outside. You can look at those in more detail. But you're probably all familiar where this is. It's at 4th Street and the Yahara River. The river is flowing from left to right. And the idea would be to So the existing dam is right here, and there's obviously 4th Street, and then here's the RDA development, and here's the old powerhouse. And the idea would be to remove the dam, and remove means take the gates and the Tainer gates and the embankment and all that down to a certain elevation, which is essentially the base of the gates where they come down. And remove all of that and replace it with a natural stone facing of a small drop structure there. So there's still a little bit of elevation left. And then also additionally do a bypass channel here. And the idea would be you're coming down in a canoe, inner tube, ducky, anything, you're a novice paddler, you're just floating the river, and you just, you don't want to take on in too much. You just stay to the right and come on down and go through, continue on down the river. And so it's a bypass essentially, and it's also really good for fish passage, for slow swim fish to go up and continue on up the river. As you move down, you might recall there's 3 culverts there, and today they're fairly dangerous. You know, the dam's dangerous, so are the culverts, because there's 3 of them, which means there's 2 piers in the middle, and there's fairly high velocity water through there. So if you're in a canoe and you're not too proficient, and you come through and happen to turn sideways and wrap on one of those, you could get pinned on the upstream side of it. And so it's not ideal. So the idea would be we'd have one of those bays would be a trail underpass. So the bike path would continue on through underneath 4th Street. Then the other 2 bays, they both have water in them, and they'd have the separator island just upstream. And so there's calm water, low velocity, and you can't pin against those piers. And so you can go through either bay of the bridge. And then as you move downstream, there'd be 2 other drops, again, small drops, and drop pool sequences with fish passages through them. And then you continue on and downstream to the new pedestrian bridge. And as Dan mentioned, it'd be hopefully the regional trail coming on down, continuously underneath the bridge and on down and connect to Man Park. So those are the main components, but what I like about this project, they all work together. So for instance, the underpass, the trail, continuous trail, so you don't have to cross the street, but it still will function during flood flows to take water, but for 99% of the time it's dry. And it also allows more depth through the other 2 bays for navigation underneath the bridge. And there's plenty of clearance under that bridge, even during fairly high flows for boats to pass through, but it's to reduce the velocity and get rid of that danger of the piers. And so when you take a dam out, the upstream water surface is going to get reduced. And how much is that going to get reduced? It depends where it is. Right upstream of dam is the most impact. As you go further upstream, it's less and less until it's 0. So that's pretty typical to any dam. Okay, so the next one. And so just marching upstream, this is to your right is the upper reaches of the project. And here's the impoundment now. So this would be the water surface when at normal flow. And as Dan mentioned, it all hugs the river right bank on the outside bend. And on the inside bend is all this existing deposition where there's some contaminated soils. The idea would be to leave those remain in place, revegetate, and hold them. And we've checked velocities, make sure they're low velocities, so that they'll immobilize the sediments downstream. And then as you keep going up, there's a footbridge, and up toward Main Street, moving up quickly. There's a map outside that has all these taped together, so it's easier to see all at once, but it shows existing and proposed water surface changes as you go up all the way to the railroad bridge. And so if you're a property owner, if you're concerned of what it looked like, that will show it. The things to look at is if you're looking down on it in plan view, you have the existing at normal flow and then proposed. So it's very minor encroachment or reduction in width. And then you'll see the depth that varies. You'll see them existing and proposed as you go up. I can't remember exactly. I think it's 2.9 feet all the way up to maybe a foot to 6 inches up at the railroad. So, and I think looking at this and looking at Google Earth over the past years, one thing, if I lived here, is like, well, how would you describe what the river would look like when you're done? Well, in 2008, they had the gates wide open, and that river went down, which essentially would be the same as what's proposed here. So it's already happened, and probably it's happened more than once. So it's very similar to what you'd see during a lower year on Yahara River. So it's not a dramatic decrease in depth, plenty of depth still to paddle down the river, and low enough velocities to paddle up the river too. So fairly minimal impact on upstream water surfaces.
Gary's a little humble, but the reason why we selected his company is because he has the most experience. He's built over 120 of these parks in the country, and he's also built the 3 in Iowa, Ann Arbor, Michigan. So he has a lot of relevant experience in the upper Midwest. So these are the next steps that we really need to do. This is the best case scenario when they could actually happen. So phase 1 would be the trail from 4th Street to 8th Street. Then there's also going to be a pedestrian bridge connecting the RDA area to the main park. Phase 2 would be all the in-water work. I said park trails, but those are the trails that you see along the actual water improvements. Remediate restoration would happen at the same time. And then phase 3 would be, we want to do a trail from the project area up to Water Street. Then there's also a possibility of opening a rental facility for these types of things. Whether that's run by the city or we contract it out. It's that way in other places. Bend, Oregon, for example, they contracted out. Ann Arbor, Michigan, they run it in-house. So our next steps, there's 3 different things going on here, 3 different consultants. So we have to refine the cost estimates. There's a lot of overlap right now. So within the next month, we'll be doing that. Then we'll do a financial presentation to the city council on the different phases. So we'll need to do a title search for the Mill Pond area. Sometimes that land belongs to the city. Sometimes that land belongs, I should say the dam operator, the dam owner. And sometimes it belongs to the riparian owner adjacent to that area. Then we do the final design and the permitting. So we have to do the final design before we can apply for the permits. We're going to be working on the trail design and engineering for the RDA property this year. Then for some fundraising, we'll do some fundraising for this project, whether that's through grants or in-kind donations or private donations. And our final step would be the rental operation planning. So that's it. If you have your comment cards, you can put those in the box in the hallway. And if you put your contact information on there, I'll reply to your comments. That's my email address, and we have all of our documents are on our website. So we have a web page dedicated to this project online, and it's pretty easy. StoughtonRec.com/riverpark. One of the things I didn't really get into too much was the fishing aspect. So if anybody knows me, fishing is my thing. So I have 2 fishing nets in my trunk right now, and what I didn't tell anybody is I've actually toured all the parks in Manchester, Iowa in late October of 2018. And it was a rainy day. There was nobody in the water actually paddling those days because it was like 35 degrees, but there were people fishing. So I actually went up to these people and talked to them without even telling them I was here working on something like this. And I was like, oh, what do you guys think about all this? And they gave me the thumbs up. So at that point, I knew it would be a good thing. And I mean, I think you just gotta have faith in the process for the fishing part of it. So I want to thank everybody for coming out. We'll be out in the hallway. Thanks.